Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 65. I have Heidi Briones on. She's from Portland. She's a long-time political activist. She is a lesbian in Portland and has recently come over to the Libertarian Party after a long time with the left. How are you, Heidi?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah,
Good to be
I
here.
always like to start out. Can you tell me about your political journey so far?
Whew. Yeah, it's a long journey. I come from a family that's been in politics for forever, so I kind of grew up with the Democratic Party being a force, in my family. I think I remember, I don't know, my family watching like Dukakis debates or something when I was super little. So goes way back to then. And yeah, I actually was a Democrat just because my family was for quite some time. And then uh, I went to UC Santa Cruz and majored in politics. So I have a degree in politics from, one of the most left wing higher education institutes in the country, especially on the West Coast. And I was an activist then. I actually started a ACLU chapter um, on campus back when ACLU was actually libertarian, and
Yeah.
and so that was I got involved with anti-war groups, that type of thing. I was basically pretty far left. Consider myself, I guess, like maybe like a moderate, I don't know, social libertarian, something like that. And then I became a bit apolitical for a moment. I was traveling the world. I was a teacher. I was probably happier then actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just doing my own thing, and then kind of went back to being a Democrat. When I came back, I sort of jumped on the whole Trump derangement train at some point and thought, no, we got to keep this Trump guy out. And went through that kind of journey, and regrettably supported Hillary Clinton back then, and yikes. And then um, really kind of changed my viewpoints once I, sort of saw Trump in and was living my life and realized, oh, hey, this guy actually isn't that bad on a lot of issues that affect my life directly and that I care about. And that was sort of a one red pill moment for me where I was like, I'm not supporting at least an establishment Democrat ever again. And that sort of led me to in 2020, I was supported Andrew Yang's campaign and got involved there. Was a volunteer for his campaign and got to know a lot of people, there. And then that led me to run for office, actually, as sort of a non-establishment challenger to Suzanne Bonamici in Oregon's first district. So ran for House of Representatives here in 2020. And then that was February, ran during the very start of COVID, like March to May, February to May, really. Obviously I lost, but I beat out the other challengers and did pretty well and made a little bit of a name for myself, in a certain sect of the non-establishment Democrats, like, like kind of Tulsi-crats and like the Yang Gang, that kind of a group. And then during COVID, I mean, really, I left the Democratic Party because I was really on board at first. I kind of trusted, in general, what the left was kind of doing. They seemed to be on the right side of issues for a lot of my life. Not always, definitely not on war and civil liberties and certain other issues, but they were okay on most major issues. So I trusted what they were saying, which was my massive mistake during the beginning of COVID. And took the vaccine, made me pretty sick. Um, and I just saw how depressed and debilitated, my city got, the small businesses closing down, people scared of each other. The lockdowns just really did a mental health number on me. So many different things. I realized this is all, this is all anti-science and not what they're telling us. And that really just kind of cemented the red pill for me and left the Democratic Party and was just partyless, non-affiliated for quite some time until a few months ago when I decided, you know what, the only party that's been on the right side of things is really the Libertarian Party. When I go down the line on all the issues I care about, which is, anti-war, anti mandates, freedom in general, liberty, uh, you know, taxes, all of these things where I'm like, this is just wrong. They've been right on these issues. And I felt like, well, I want to be at least on the side of a party that's been right on the issues that I care about. And uh, you know, couldn't be a Republican really because I'm just a little bit too left for that, and I'm not. Like I'm pro-choice in too many ways, and it just doesn't vibe with me. So went that direction. Now here I am. I'm involved with the Oregon Libertarian Party, which is a small party, but still the third largest party in the country, and I feel like I can make a change.
Yeah. Is there any campus in the UCal system that's not really left wing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say UCR maybe UC
Okay, yeah, I just
Riverside,
yeah,
UC Merced.
yes, you were the banana slugs, that
Well, I mean, we're actually
one of the
yeah, I
great
mean
nicknames in yeah, in
yeah, I
sports.
mean, people mostly think of Berkeley, but technically I'd say Santa Cruz is probably further left wing because Berkeley does, attract, a lot of people that are hardcore academics, and it has a
Yeah.
very high prestige for that. UC Santa Cruz didn't even have grades until the mid-90s, I believe.
Oh, wow.
When I went there, they did have grades. They had grades and I forget what they call it now, but like basically a paragraph that your teacher writes about you, and that's all they used to have was just like you'd get this paragraph. So then they
Yeah.
stopped because nobody could get into grad school or do anything with these like these like nicely written little paragraphs from their teachers. But the campus was actually constructed as a kind of response to what happened in Berkeley. So in Berkeley, you obviously there was where all the demonstrations and anti-Vietnam war protests went down and all that stuff. So Berkeley is very centralized. So like you have a central area of the campus where everybody can gather easily and have these protests. And they designed UC Santa Cruz to not have a central location and make it kind of impossible. So it's in this beautiful redwood forest. And there's all these different colleges, and they're very spread out, and there's no real central location. Makes it very, very
Oh,
hard
wow.
to like have everybody gather and have an actual protest or anything go down. So they actually built it for leftists to like have like a place to kind of do whatever they want, but not like cause any major problems.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I imagine, was it a big deal when you went to mom and dad and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm leaving the blue team"? Because sometimes that's, it's almost like telling your family you're leaving the church.
Sort of. I mean, I didn't really say anything to them. Like, I mean, I wasn't always a hardcore Democrat, to be fair. In California, you can be declined to state. They've had it that way for a while and still vote in any primary. So I was always kind of declined to state because I was a sort of a non-establishment type and like a leftist for a while. And, I figured I was too far left for the Democrats for quite some time. So they kinda knew that. They knew that, like, I generally, agreed with the Democrats on issues, and I would vote for Democrats in the major, elections, but I wasn't, like, a hardcore Democrat, so, I mean, they're okay with it. I think I've told them worse things at this point, so I
Yeah.
don't think anything will shock them anymore.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Yeah. Portland is certainly went overboard. What I find interesting. You have pals in Portland.
Oh, yeah.
In Austin, we have Book People. I don't think it's quite as well known, but it's our big independent bookstore. And I go down there, and the last time I was in there, I still saw the employees wearing masks and everything. I'm just thinking to myself, you support all of these policies, and yet look at how Amazon benefited from this. And I know you guys totally hate Amazon.
Mm.
And I suspect Pals feels the same way about Amazon as well, right? I'm curious to know how Pals was during all of this. Were they really down with all this, or you know?
Yeah, I mean, PALS is definitely, I think, supporters of the current thing and pretty
Oh, yeah.
left wing. So yeah, they did actually have quite a bit of restrictions. I think that, I think they did okay just because they are pals and they're iconic, but I'm sure that they,
Yeah.
had some struggles with, having that many people in, but everybody kind of I don't know, in Portland everybody was it felt like everybody was sort of on board when you would like go out places because that's how Portland is. We're sort of passive
Yeah.
aggressive. So even if we're upset about it, most people wouldn't say anything. I mean, sometimes people would have outbursts. I think like my wife had a few like outbursts like in supermarkets towards kind of the end of it just because it's like I'm sick of wearing these masks or yeah, I forgot my mask. I'm just like grabbing something real quick and it was just, there's always that kind of thing that would happen once in a while. But yeah, when you would go out, I would say people would just be following like the rules sort of exactly and
Yeah.
you would feel that vibe that everybody was in line and supporting it. So I mean I think pals did fine just because they're
Yeah.
iconic and they do actually have their online store and
Yeah.
other things that they were doing to stay in business. But other people that are not pals, I mean, they're they're the ones that really struggled and shut down and weren't
Yeah.
able to make it. So there's tons of stories of that.
Well, yeah, I've bought books from pals that I wasn't able to find anywhere else and ordered them. So yeah, if you're ever in Portland, it's certainly worth checking out. They've also got this rare book section where you can go, you go look at really I saw a book that was autographed by Anwar Sadat. I mean, he was the prime minister of Egypt who was shot over 40 years ago. Yeah, it's also I don't know if you ever get to Bend, but Bend, Oregon, of course, is home of the last blockbuster.
Oh yeah,
It's-
I
yeah,
have a hoodie
yeah,
like for I have a t-shirt I
yeah.
think. Yeah, I've been there. Been to the last Blockbuster, which is awesome.
Yeah, and
Actually, I
that
enjoy
I
that.
think that's becoming now kind of a thing that people go to just because it's there. It's like the last blockbuster store. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish, I mean, I'm like that. I'm nostalgic for the 90s. I think like a lot of people that live in Portland, are we kind of want that,
Yeah,
more analog time to come
yeah,
back. There was sort of a beauty of, how fun it was to go and look and see and what movie are you going to get? Like that's like such a
yeah,
big choice, like it's like, oh, I just get this movie and then that's it. I'm kind of like stuck with it for the next 2 days and that's
yeah,
I don't know. I remember just picking a movie and me and my friends would just watch it, like, over and over and over and over, so that's how I know, like, all these movies by heart is what people don't
yeah,
know. They're like, "Oh, you know this whole movie by heart," and I'm like, "Yeah, because I had to, like, go and convince my parents to take me to, like rent a movie and spend, like, $5 or whatever it was, and then I had it for 2 days, and I would watch it a million times, and people don't have that anymore. We watch something for 10 seconds, if we're
yeah.
lucky, and then we get bored and we move on to something else.
Yeah, since you mentioned, you're a lesbian. What's going on with it being Pride Month? What do you think about all the? It seems like there's people out there who want to, drag queen story hour or people trying to groom kids. I mean, you sent out a tweet, said I've been to lots of lesbian parties, and one thing there were kids. You
Yeah.
know,
What's going on is something that I think has been going on in the background for a while that no one really wanted to talk about. But I mean, I just think that the left has co opted the LGBT movement, if you want to say that, or community for their own purposes. And, the left essentially relies on recruiting kids to the cause and to be, these sort of activists and warriors for whatever the current thing that they want to push is. And I think that that's something that's been going on in the background for quite some time because the left is very good at organizing and works on these issues consistently, and more conservative people tend to just react to that after the fact and don't they're not working like that hard behind the scenes, knowing that they're infiltrating like every single organization or cause that they can. And I think that the gay marriage issue and gay rights issue in general was something very easy for the left to jump on because the right was very socially conservative and just like not friendly to gay people in general. So that was something like, oh, well, we'll help you guys. We care about gay people. We care about everybody. Well, what do you want? You want marriage? Okay, we'll work on that for you. And then in the background, really, they're thinking, well, what we really want is to like get more people onto the left. We really want more people, supporting our causes. And how do we do that? I mean, okay, we basically have to get them as young as possible. I mean, that's just, a rule of life, whether it's marketing or, you're trying to sell a product or you're trying to sell activism or you're trying to sell an ideology, you want to grab people as young as possible when they're most impressionable and get them onto your side. So I think that that's sort of what's happened because I mean, really, sexuality shouldn't have anything to do with your political ideology. Like,
Yeah.
it really doesn't make any sense. Like, you should have any sexuality and then think whatever you want about politics or have any economic ideas that you like. These two shouldn't necessarily be related. It's just one aspect of your life. So I think that that's really what's going on, and the left will jump on anything that they think they can jump on, and where they can recruit more people to their causes, and that's what we're seeing now is it manifesting in a really crazy way where they are just outwardly coming after kids and women and really pushing out a lot of moderate and conservative gay people that used to consider themselves part of this community and used to kind of relish in that, and now they're moving away rapidly.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know it seems to be that way, and it seems like I think a lot of people are getting very upset about it. I don't know what they really want, but the left picks up causes, and then once they achieve those causes, they drop them and then they move on. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Jack the Perfume Nationalist. I mean, he talks about how gay men have just been completely thrown under the bus by the left now that because
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I, and I don't know, but sometimes I've and I don't know where we go from here. It's and what do you think about now we're trying to transition kids. We don't let kids buy cigarettes or alcohol, but you're going to let them do life altering surgeries. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a twofold thing. I mean, one, it's getting, sort of getting people on the left, like I mentioned. Another part of it is definitely profit motivated. You're getting a customer for life, that's addicted to these pharmaceuticals, these hormones, and has to take them, in order to keep this state of being that they want, and then these surgeries are massively profitable. I mean, people are making millions and millions of dollars off, doing these surgeries on kids. And then it's a way for kind of, I think, the state to like have ownership over children. I mean, I don't even know how many states now have passed laws. I think Oregon included now. I have to check on that, but definitely Washington, where the kids can be taken away from the parents if they refuse to let them transition or refuse to affirm their gender, is what they call it. They can actually be taken away, and CPS can take over your kids and then, allow them to do whatever they like. And I think that yeah, there's a lot of facets to this, but it's concerning for a few reasons for me. For one, it's like deeply homophobic to transition a child that's just, maybe gender nonconforming, especially with little girls. There's been long-term studies now that gender nonconforming little girls do turn out to be, gay or bisexual in large numbers. And so you literally are eliminating lesbians, and not allowing them
Yeah,
to figure out who they are, and little boys as well. You're not allowing kids to figure out who they are. I mean, I talk about my story, and I didn't really fully know that I was gay and wanted to like live as a gay woman. I mean, I knew that I was different. I knew I was attracted to women or, and even girls when I was younger, but I didn't really know that like this is like a permanent life choice that I want to make until I was in my 30s. And I think that that's fine. And I think that, you shouldn't you shouldn't be pressured, certainly before puberty and not even during puberty, to do these types of things. And I think we need to accept what is an adult, and that should be across the board in this country. What should adults be allowed to do? When can children consent to permanent decisions for their life? Anything to do with sexuality, you shouldn't be able to consent to that until you're considered an adult. So I think that we need to, you know, really protect children right now, and the fact that the left is able to twist it into, protect trans kids is just like mind-blowing to me, because there's no such thing as a trans kid. That's an adult decision that you make. Um,
yeah,
and that's not something you can tell, someone else's children that they're trans or not, and hide that from the parents and push them away from their parents if they tell them no. I'm not going to allow that, and you need to wait
yeah,
until you're an adult and outside of my house to make those types of decisions. Period. And that's just been, something that we would all accept until a few years ago. So it's definitely disturbing.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, and it's not like your 11-year-old wants to go get their ears pierced or get a nose ring. I mean, those can you can take those out.
Sure.
These
It's
are
not
things that
gonna alter their
you can't
life.
reverse these things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, we don't even let kids get tattoos. I mean,
yeah,
I think it depends on the state maybe, but, and
yeah,
in general, it's like you gotta be 18 to get a tattoo. It's a permanent decision. Piercings, there, obviously that can close up. That's a little more gray
yeah,
area. But yeah, I think that parents, yes, they should, be able to make decisions for their children. So that is kind of there is this sort of libertarian argument that like if the state gets involved and tells parents what they can't do with their kids, and that's not libertarian. That's like taking away the parent right to decide. And it's like, yeah, but you have to realize that these
yeah,
medical procedures and hormones, like I consider that child abuse. So that's, actually the mainstream libertarian position currently, at least with the Mises Caucus, running the party, is that this is child abuse. And if, someone's
yeah,
abusing their child, then you don't allow it. And that's against the law. So we have to draw like some sort of line. We can't say you can do anything you want with your kids because we don't allow you to, traffic your kids. We don't allow you to beat up your kids. We don't allow you to kill your kids. We don't allow you to do so many things like to a child because we realize that that's wrong and parents, aren't perfect, but we're allowing this in the name of I don't know what. So
yeah.
it's very concerning.
I think I also think big victims in this are those girls who like to do who are definitely grew up to be straight, but they still like to do guy things.
Hmm.
The girl who may want to take machine shop, or the girl who likes to go hunting. And I certainly knew girls who liked to go hunting when I grew up. But
Yeah.
they were still definitely girls.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, well, everybody's still a girl. I mean, in my book, I don't think you
yeah,
can actually transition. I think that yes, trans is a real thing, but it's a very, very rare condition. It's more dysphoria that some people do experience, and that medical transition can help. But it should be a last resort, and it's an adult decision, and it's after years of therapy and other things that you can try. And then if nothing else does it, and that relieves that pressure from you and you can live your life, then fine. As an adult, you can make that decision to live a different way. But the whole purpose is to pass as the opposite sex and have that life that, is you appear to be the opposite sex and you're living a life as the opposite sex, but you realize also that you're not the opposite sex. That's the whole point of the thing. And that was, generally what it was thought to be for very long. And the transition to this transgender thing where it's just, you can socially transition and just decide, and just make everybody, use pronouns that you prefer and all of the stuff that you can just decide one day. Like now I can just decide tomorrow that now I'm a man and you have to use, he, him pronouns with me. And, you can't call me Heidi anymore because now I'm Henry and that's my dead name. And now that's a hate crime. If you use my, that's just, I mean, that kind of stuff is, yeah, I feel like that's just leftism kind of rearing its ugly head. That has nothing to do with a medical diagnosis and somebody, needing to kind of relieve the pressure of whatever happened to them or whatever they feel, makes them so uncomfortable with who they are. But that has nothing to do with, how you express your gender. So when you're talking about like these women that like to hunt or do, typically male things, yeah, that has nothing to do with sexuality. And that's why, my position, I consider myself a radical feminist. And the radical feminist position is that sex and gender are different things because sex is immutable and sex is something you can't change. And that's, what you're born with. But gender is something you can mess around with if you want. I can decide, women didn't even used to be allowed to wear pants. I can decide to dress now basically what's considered very manly, like 50 years ago especially. Now it's much more fluid, but I can dress like a man essentially.
yeah,
And that's fine, and that has nothing to do with anything else. And if I see a man in a dress, I mean, I usually don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine too if that makes him feel comfortable and that's what he wants to wear. I mean, yeah, I think maybe he's subjecting himself to maybe some ridicule or maybe he might be a little unsafe. But if that's what he wants to do, then that's fine. But you're not a woman, you're a man in a dress and you're expressing yourself, in a more feminine way. And I don't have a problem with that. That's where I do disagree with the conservatives on the thing because they'll say sex and gender are the same. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I think gender is a spectrum and people can be a little more feminine, a little more masculine, but that doesn't change their sex. That there's two different things. One's immutable, and we can agree on that, and the other one is just like that's how you want to express yourself.
Yeah, certainly. It's one reason why I put Christopher on a lot of my email and stuff like that, because if people see Christopher, they know I'm a male. If they
Right.
see Chris, they may not. They
Mhm.
may have some
True.
indecisiveness about it, but
True. Yeah.
it's what and what do you think about sports? I mean, we now
Oh
have
man. Yeah.
which is just I yeah
It just destroys women's sports completely. You just really cannot have males competing against women. It's just so obvious. I mean, they're clearly, obviously, men are stronger and better at sports than women. I mean, overwhelmingly, I mean, you may have some outliers, but in general, men are more athletic. They have more testosterone. They're stronger. I mean, how are you going to compete against
yeah
a man, even a man that's been on estrogen? For a while is still going to be stronger. And I think that we've seen that. And, I mean, that's sort of one issue that has really made people aware, though, because sports is something most people know about, and I think that that's actually good that they did try to infiltrate sports in a way. Like, it sucks for the girls that, are getting harmed, but I think it made the issue very mainstream because sports is something everybody understands. Maybe everybody doesn't care so much
yeah
about women's prisons or these, like, kinda offshoot groups or, like, what's happening, and whatever in certain areas, but they do care about sports. So that's something we can all relate to. But yeah, it's going to obviously ruin women and girls sports. You can't compete against boys and men.
I can't imagine what happened in prisons. That would probably I mean,
Shoot, man, I'm
you
not
already
committing
have
any
somebody in there
crimes.
for
That's for
violence.
sure.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
being a good girl now.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. Or
Yeah.
you can imagine teenage boys says, "Oh, you mean I can just say I'm a girl and I can go in the girls' bathroom? Oh boy, that'll be easy." It's and
Oh yeah.
and I come from a gen and I've got to say I was a teen in the 80s. We were absolutely horrible. If we thought somebody was gay or anything like that, it was really. But I do think most of us got out of that because I mean I went to my my reunions and the people that were gay were open about being gay. They weren't that way in high school, but they weren't the reunions
Yeah, it's a
and
very
we yeah
go ahead. Oh no, go ahead.
we kind of sensed that we kind of sensed that they were gay. I mean, it
Yeah.
didn't shock me that these people were gay, but there's definitely I hope we you can get to this point where there's acceptance, but you don't have to have parades. I mean, we and I hope we can get to that place of acceptance. Where
Yeah. I
yeah
think that we are really. I mean, I think that this whole pride thing and pushing it so hard is really like just a way to make people very reactionary so that the left kind of has like a ground to stand on almost. Like it's like, okay, let's keep pushing it even harder so that we can have people come out and now start being like, oh yeah, well, actually I am against gay people now that you mention it. I was fine with them before, but now they're doing all this stuff and like I think, it's wrong again. And then, the left can kind of push even harder and see, oh, see, they are against you, see. And kind of push people back. So I think that there's a push and pull going on, and when people are losing in politics, they tend to go even harder and get even more crazy, and then the other side that's more reactionary will say, oh look, they're winning, see, look at what's going on, and then it
yeah
continues this like this push and pull so they could keep moving agendas forward.
what do you think the political left wants right now? I mean, you were there for a long time, and what do you think they really want? What do you think they've always just wanted to?
Yeah, they always want the same thing. They always want revolution,
Yeah,
and socialism and a full takeover of the state by whomever they deem appropriate. And then, eventually they think, communist utopia, is eventual. They just think that that's inevitable. If you're a Marxist, you think that capitalism leads to socialism, which then leads to like a communist utopia. And there's different ways of getting there, different ways people think it happens. But in general, that's what you want. You want a revolution, probably violent. You're okay with that. And then you want to install somebody who, will distribute wealth, as evenly as you think
yeah,
is necessary. And then eventually, like that's what you always want. I mean, really, like if you're an actual leftist, you agree that capitalism should be destroyed And the only way to do that really is some kind of revolution. And there's, some leftists are more pacifist and some are okay with violence. But, eventually it leads there and a takeover. So I think that that's always the goal. And they just have different ways that they think that they can get there, whether culturally or otherwise.
It almost seems to be a universal dogma on the left that there is no free will and nobody is a moral agent. That if somebody become and what I find interesting is they care more about somebody who robs a liquor store than the cashier at the liquor store who has a gun pointed at him.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if the cashier has a gun and shoots the robber, they want to arrest him for shooting the robber and might call him every name in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, because they think everything is systemic and comes from capitalism being evil and a bad system. So if somebody's robbing a liquor store or robbing a store, that's the problem is the system. It's not that person's fault. It's that they
Yeah,
can't survive in this evil system. And so to punish them for something like theft or, whatever is wrong because, that's actually, fine because this is a bad system. So you should, like that's sort of like it's just a circular thing, and then, like, the only way we can make the system better is to, get rid of the system, okay, and then replace it with what? It just, like, basically the state has to take full control at that point, so it always leads to the same end, but yeah, when you're on the left, you generally will blame everything on systemic racism, on, like or systemic issues, and that's something that's sort of ingrained in you that it's like, this is a bad system and we're just surviving in it. We're just like in the matrix. We've all just taken the blue pill and we're just like do. So it's not our fault like that the system is bad. You have to dismantle the system. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
so there's no individuality, there's no concept of free will. As you mentioned, there's no just what I'm choosing to do this. It's just I'm a product of what's going on in this corrupt system.
yeah, and there's also a great deal of as Rollo Tomasi called it, victim signaling.
Mm. Yeah, well, because you have to be part of the oppressed class, right? If you're not oppressed, then how are you going to have a revolution? You're not, we all have to band together as oppressed people and victims of this horrible system in order to revolt against it. So if you tell people that they're fine and they're individuals and they can make their own choices and everything will be okay, then how are they gonna how are you gonna get them to revolt against the system, right? So that's where these concepts of intersectionality and men can be women if they want, and we're all oppressed, and we can all be trans, and whatever. Like, this is all, just a way of getting more soldiers, sort of, for the revolution. Because how are you going to wage it if you tell people that they're fine, the way they are? You can't ever say that. You really can't, as like a far leftist, if somebody, oh, great, good for you. There's no problem with the system. Then you win the game, and you can do whatever you want. Like, that's not gonna, recruit anybody.
Yeah, and I do notice they seem to pick their own battles and focus on certain things that it's yeah. So what's the situation in Portland right now? I've heard it's getting pretty bad right now.
Yeah, it's been getting bad. I mean, I moved here about 5 years ago and definitely seen it decline pretty rapidly. You have more and more encampments, and tents being pitched daily. Certain areas are just unlivable. Pretty sad. Like Chinatown, for example, downtown is just horrible now. Used to be pretty nice area, at least decent, and parts of downtown, parts of the east side, Portland, northeast. You just have so many encampments that it's just out of hand. I mean, even just if I look down the street right now, I can see an RV that's been parked there for multiple months, behind Trader Joe's here, and tents and all this other stuff that are just popping up. So we'll see. I mean, they recently passed a resolution 3-1, the city council to make daytime camping illegal. I mean, they've done kind of similar things in the past, so I don't know if anything will
Yeah,
be enforced. But that's supposed to go into effect this summer, as you can't daytime camp anywhere. So they're supposed to like first give you a warning and then fine you and then 30 days in jail, I guess, if you're caught daytime camping. But we'll see. I mean, Portland has a problem with enforcing laws. The police really don't enforce much because they're not backed up by the
Yeah.
DA, by the district attorney, so nothing really happens. So they just don't care, and that's something that needs to change. I think like the police really need to feel like they have some some sort of authority and power to like do something when somebody calls and says there's an issue. Right now, they come out and just tell them they can't do anything, and I interacted with the Portland PD, and it's just kinda crazy, like, they just really were just telling me all the things they can't do. They come down, and we had a guy that was harassing us. We had, like, an axe, in our backyard and was
Yeah.
chopping down trees, like, our neighbor, one of our neighbors who thought that, like, our property lines were wrong and was just, like, chopping down trees, said they weren't ours, and just crazy
Mhm.
stuff, and we called the cops, and they're like, yeah, we can't do anything. None of those are arrestable offenses. Like, we can't do anything about him being in your backyard with an axe, like chopping things down. We can't do anything about him, making homophobic remarks to you or threatening you verbally or like any of these things that
Yeah.
were going on. We just can't do nothing. And like, it's just like, okay, well, and then they also they also recommended we not get a firearm. And I'm like, well, screw you, I'm getting a firearm if I want. Like, you have, like, 3 guns on you right now, and, like like, I'm not, like like, it's just ridiculous stuff. They just recommended we get a camera, like a camera that, like, has a live feed so that, we could, like, send them anything that was going on, and I'm like, "Well, how's that gonna protect my life?" Is like, a camera's nice, if it's theft and you wanna report it to your insurance, I guess, but it's not gonna, like it's not gonna do anything to, like, save my life. So, yeah, they're
Yeah.
just really not empowered, to make any changes, so I think it's, like, a dark time in Portland, but I do think that it's cyclical. I think that things will turn around, but we really need to start enforcing, just basic laws because we have people shooting fentanyl, outside of grocery stores and in front of kids, and that's just considered, like, a normal thing, and, we can't have that. I mean, me as, like, a tax-paying, resident, I mean, I could go outside and just pitch a tent and like, like have like, almost like a better life in a way. And I get why people do it if they're like, they feel like they can't survive. They have mental health problems or addictions and they can't hold down a job. I mean, why not just pitch a tent somewhere like Portland or San Francisco or LA and just live outside the matrix as much as you can. And because when you're a citizen that pays taxes, you feel like, well, I'm losing all my liberties. I can't even walk down the sidewalk because there's just tents everywhere and like needles everywhere. And what am I paying for? Like, what actually am I doing? So then you almost feel like, well, I mean, maybe I'll just extract myself some society too. If I had an addiction or mental health problems and I couldn't make it, it seems like a viable option now. And it's really sad that we're just encouraging it and ignoring it for the most part and letting people just do this and pretend it doesn't exist, just pretending it's not everywhere.
Yeah. Well, there also seems to be a correlation though too, where if you have really expensive housing, you're going to have more homeless. I don't know, what the laws are specifically in Portland, but this is something a lot of good libertarians are out there talking about too. Is when you have a lot of restrictions on housing and and a lot of restrictive building codes, it makes it harder to build homes, and therefore you're going to have more homeless. What do you have to say about that?
Sure, I mean, I would push back a little because for one, we don't know who these people are. Most of the homeless on the streets are coming from out of state. We don't have exact statistics because it's very hard to find who these people are. But from nonprofits and people doing work on the street, most of them actually are coming from outside of Oregon. They're getting bussed in. So it's hard to say that that's a housing problem in in
Yeah.
Portland when this person was an addict on the street in Montana and they bust him over to Portland because they don't put up with that there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's one thing. I mean, yeah, housing is expensive in Portland. It's not as expensive as other places, but there's no housing, control or anything like that. But I would say that doesn't solve anything because I know drug addicts, and if it doesn't help them really to have a place to, like,
Yeah.
just do drugs necessarily, they're just gonna destroy that place and invite all their friends over and not I mean, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, so it depends on the person. I'm sure there are some people I know there are some people that are on kind of the edges of this issue that are just kind of like, I'm just really poor and, like, I lost my job and some horrible things happen and now I'm out on the street, but I do wanna get back in somewhere I just can't afford to get into housing. That is a percentage of people that you do see on the street for sure. But I don't think it's the overwhelming majority or anything. I think it's really like a mental health and addiction crisis, and also just like a cultural crisis as well, because in general, people's families would take care of these people. Like if you go to more traditional countries, you don't see the homelessness, even if
Yeah.
there's abject poverty. People's families just get together. They have large families that live around each other and stick together. And if somebody's not doing well, that person lives with them and somebody cares for them. And it's a burden on the family. But now we don't have like that strong family structure anymore. You have, a lot of single moms that raised these kids and couldn't handle it. And now that, they just can't handle it. I mean, if you have, let's say you're a single mom, you're struggling, you're working all the time, you have a few kids, can't watch them all the time, don't know what they're doing, start doing drugs, then they start robbing you blind. So you kick them out. What else, what else are you going to do? They're like harming your other kids and now they're out on the
Yeah.
street. So I think there's a lot of problems that go into this crisis that's so multifaceted that it's very individualized, and you have to go and talk to each of these people, I think, individually and find out what their situation is and figure out what they need and if they even want that help. And so, yeah, I wish it was just as simple as like building more housing, but I don't know if that would solve most of the problem. I think it might even just create these projects that become, horrible, like places of, drug use and crime.
Yeah. That's true. There's a community in Austin called Community First Village
Mhm.
where it's kind of become a place to help the homeless, and they really do, and they try to help each other out, and I know, for example, over at this village they've got an auto repair place. You can go get them
That's
work on your
cool.
car. They do little work stuff like that, and of course they also have their AA meetings and stuff like that, because
Well,
I
yeah, they
think
need that. Yeah.
there's definitely because there's definitely a correlation there between
Yeah.
homelessness does indicate other problems, and I've also, and the thing about cities being dumping grounds, I've heard the same thing, about Dallas and Houston sending their homeless people to Austin. I mean, you pick somebody up on the street, what, you buy them a bus ticket for $50 and they're on their way. It's not hard at all.
Yeah, that solves the problem for them, right? And then it
Yeah.
and then it keeps it here, like in these cities
Yeah.
that are, too compassionate to do anything about it. But I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, I think that if more people, I think honestly, like nonprofits, and like private individuals even sometimes, or even companies, even whatever, even corporations or whatever else, like could actually handle some of this stuff if they had the funding and were more organized. But we're funding
Yeah.
billions and billions of dollars into government entities that are doing jack all and are really just stealing the money and lining their pockets, as far as I know, because like nothing's being solved or helped, and I haven't seen any signs of anything when there's been billions and billions pushed into homelessness in Portland from taxpayer money. So I think that that's a major problem, is where is this money going? I'd rather fund, like you said, like a nonprofit or something, maybe somebody that owned like some land, maybe on the outskirts of town or wherever, maybe empty lots, who knows, and could set up, something for these people where they have community and they have support, because that's really what they're doing. I mean, they're doing that on their own. Because they don't have it, they're just making these encampments, and that because that's what they need. They need to be like around others, and kind of not feel like they're alone and have, like a sort of thing. And they're doing it on their own, but the problem is it's just kind of madness, and they need somebody there that's to kind of keep the peace and see what's going on
Yeah.
medically with them, and to have those AA meetings and make sure things are taken care of and people just don't start robbing each other, doing all these crazy things to each other. So I think that if it's a little more organized, I think we could maybe create some communities for people that feel safe, but they can also feel like they're a halfway kind of point if they do want to jump out of this and go back into the matrix, if you will. Then they can do that.
Yeah, certainly. What you were on the left. What did you see? Why do you think so many on the left did embrace all of the COVID tyranny? And what do you think's up with that? I mean, what happened to the left, as you were a part of it, that made it just become so authoritarian?
Yeah, it's tough to say exactly, but I think that leftism does become authoritarian at some point, right? Like I mentioned, like at some point, like the end point is sort of, you know, them installing some leader or person to, install socialism through a revolution. And that kind of, definitely has to be authoritarian in some manner, or wealth has to be distributed. So you have to take wealth from, rich people and distribute it to people that have less. Like, all of these things have to be done by some kind of authority at some aspect. So I think the left kind of winning, for a bit, sort of push them more authoritarian because they're like, well, we're right. Like we've been right on, gay rights, and we've been right on, all these social issues, and we're the ones that are compassionate, and we're the ones that care about people, and we're the ones that, are winning, and that, have, all of this going for us. And then when there's an emergency, I think that they tend to, go towards that authority when they feel like they're winning, when they feel like things are going, in their direction. So I don't know exactly how this turn happened because I was sort of a part of it. So I sort of went along with it. I think it's this current thing, right? It's like they keep pushing these
Yep.
narratives onto the left, and now most of the media is on board with what the left is doing because they see that it's sort of working and there's profit, the politicians are behind it. And so the media is pushing these messages onto people, and then we're just like eating it up. And I realize that Democrats really do eat up what the mainstream media will say, and that's what was pushed. It was like, this is horrible, this is scary, and people just eat that stuff up, like fear. And and then they take that and they're willing to do anything to like not die or to not kill their neighbor or to not kill grandma or whatever it is that makes them feel like they're being compassionate and they're being safe and they're on the right side of things. So I think that fear kind of like pushed onto that, and you just sort of jumped on it quickly because you're like, well, we can fix this if we all are in it together. There was that in it together thing, it's that like we can all fix this if we all just do what we're told. And that's sort of, yeah, I think like what happened, and we all just jumped on it. And then I immediately realized it was like a mistake, and this was just leading an authoritarian direction that I'm not okay with. So that, yeah, I wish I had an exact um, reason why, but I think it's so many things that led us to that point. But I think that that is something that the left kind of needs. Like they need for people to jump on board with whatever the current thing is in order to keep pushing things on. And almost COVID felt like a test. Like how far can we push this
Yeah.
authoritarianism if we say there's an emergency? And I think that they could push it pretty far if they found out. And like, and if it was something more serious, I can only imagine, like, what if COVID was 300 times more deadly, or something, or what if, it affected kids rather than elderly more, or like what would have happened then, and what could happen the next time is what really kind of scares me.
I think what COVID probably exposed to everybody, though, is, and I don't think the general public was aware of it, is just how corrupt the intellectual class in America is.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm talking, the professors
Oh
at
yeah.
the college professors in the UC system, but all over the place too,
Oh yeah.
and all that. I don't think they realized just how much a lot of these allegedly smart people have sold out humanity, and they really have. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to wrap my head around it and ask myself why.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually dropped out of a PhD program, so I kind of know a little bit about it.
Yep.
It's Yeah, you can't get funding if you're going against the grain, and you can't move forward in academia, and that's what made me leave. I mean, I was getting a PhD in linguistics, nothing political or science related necessarily or anything, but I was told multiple times like I couldn't study or, write research or research certain topics because they're not popular right now, and I wouldn't be able to get funding. So that's the whole peer review aspect of it, and you wouldn't be able to work with these, certain professors who are working on certain things. So you got to work on what they're working on if you want to work with them and be able to get a job and have, prospects. So I mean, the same thing happens in science and, biology and all of these other fields. So if they're all studying mRNA technology and that's the way to get ahead and get funding and get money, then that's what people are going to study and that's what people are going to believe, and that's where all the peer reviewed, this whole peer reviewed studies are going to come from, is that who's going to peer review something that goes against the grain and get zero funding and have to work on it all on your own for 5 years and fund it yourself and have nobody care and have it not published in any journals. That's very difficult to tell somebody who's an academic who, needs to make money and survive. It's not necessarily a profitable field if you can't get government grants and you can't get into these journals to promote yourself and your ideas and get, further funding. So I think that that's part of it is the government is, subsidizing academia in multiple ways, and people want to get ahead and they want to be able to get jobs. And how can you do it if you're going against that? So I definitely think that's a massive problem, but the whole higher education field is definitely very, very left wing. I mean, I experienced it on my own. If you're a conservative or even moderate,
Mhm.
you are definitely pushed to the side. Your ideas aren't really heard, and you don't get, you know, you don't get the professors to like you. You don't get good grades. You don't move forward. You don't get scholarships. You don't get funding. All this stuff. So it's a big club, and you're not in it, and it's something where they've taken over. The left has taken over academia in a very methodical, organized way that there's not a lot that can be done about it. I don't think at this point it would take like 100 years to reverse it.
Yeah.
So it's very concerning. I agree there.
Were you any place besides Cal Santa Cruz or?
Yeah, I mean, I got my bachelor's there, but I also went to for my master's. I went to Cal State Dominguez Hills in Carson, California, in Southern California, and then I got my PhD. Well, I haven't got a PhD, but I did my PhD until I dropped out in Northern Arizona University, Flagstaff. So I went to school in those places, but I mean, I lived in LA, Orange County is where I'm from, and then I lived in Santa Cruz and San Francisco and Oakland for quite some time. Lived in Taiwan and South Korea teaching English, and then I came back, got my master's, and ended up going to a PhD program. Also lived in Nevada as well. I worked at Tesla, building battery modules, and now I'm in Portland, so did like quite a tour, quite a West Coast tour.
Tesla building battery modules. That sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I saw Elon a bunch of times because
Yeah.
we were working on
So-
his
South
robots and stuff.
South
Yeah.
Korea seems to be a popular place for English teachers. I've noticed too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you make good money and a lot of jobs are really good. I mean, I had free housing and decent money and lots of
Yeah.
vacation time, and they treat you really well. When you're a teacher in Asia, it's considered very, it's a very respected profession. So it's a totally different world, and yeah, it's nice. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, yeah, and like somebody circulated yesterday, who's America's greatest ally, and they had this checklist that here's why South Korea is. I said, yeah, you're right. They because there is definitely a
They do, yeah, they do appreciate, not being North Korea, that's for sure. So, like, they are pretty pro, USA in a lot of
yeah,
aspects because, I mean, we're still there,
yeah,
still.
but it's so much. Yeah, yeah. What do you think's gonna? How long are we in South Korea? What do you think? How do you think that's gonna resolve itself? I mean, it's not gonna stay that way forever.
I was there for a year. I mean, most Koreans believe, yeah, there'll be one Korea, eventually, um, and they're happy to have North Korea be part of South Korea, and they think it'll just happen eventually. And they're obviously worried that it'll be violent. And it'll take, an act of war or something, but they hope that's not how it goes down, and they hope there could be diplomacy or something happening at some point. But yeah, they don't like being separated from, the rest of the country and have, feel like their people are suffering under, totalitarianism, and then and then also they have the shittiest part of the country. They have like the coldest, most mountainous region, in North Korea. So it's not like, they got the best of the best, as far as
Yeah,
geography either.
yeah, because I've heard South Korea gets both very hot and very cold.
Oh yeah, definitely like 4 seasons. I mean, I was in the south of South Korea, kind of near Busan, in a small town near there, and
Yeah,
it's 4 seasons. I mean, it does get very hot and humid, like probably the
yeah.
hottest I've ever felt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some places, summer's 85, winter's 25. In South Korea, it's maybe summer's 105 and winter is 5 below. That's what I've heard at least.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's definitely, a wide variety. Like if you're talking about Seoul, yeah, Seoul does get very, very cold, and it will get, to the 90s and very humid. Definitely, like the hottest and the coldest I've ever felt probably was in South
Yeah,
Korea. You can get both. Yeah, but they have, I mean, beautiful kind of islands too. There's like Jeju Island, and there's like some tropical kind of areas too. If you there's certain spots, but yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful country. It's mountainous and just lovely, and just like the people are great, and they do, I don't know, they're just survivors too. I mean, most of the
Oh
food,
yeah.
like in Korea, comes from things that the US soldiers were giving them, like hot dogs and stuff. There's a lot of like food that they that has hot dogs and ramen and all this stuff that's now like traditional Korean food that were things that during the Korean War, we were giving them,
Yeah.
they're starving,
Mhm.
like here's our rations, like, and they would make these like crazy, great, traditional foods out of them. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah. South Korea has really come a long way in the last 7 years. It really has. I mean, and that's just the whole contrast. If you look at did you meet any North Koreans who had gotten out of North Korea?
Yeah, one time, I mean, I wouldn't say met, but they spoke at our university. There was one who kind of spoke, and it was odd. It was like an odd speech. They kind of just like, they were very socially awkward and kind of talked about like what their experience was like coming, and how they like South Korea. And I don't know, I just remember him saying like, yeah, the weirdest thing was like bananas, like that you guys have like fruit, like all this fruit that you have, and we would only have like, certain fruits, or we didn't have any bananas, and things that had to be like imported, or those types of things like they thought were really odd. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say about that, because I think some of these, I think there's like a re-education camp that a lot of these poor North Koreans like go through, to, kind of, and some of them are, I don't know, they kind of get jobs with the government going around and talking about these issues, and there's some weird stuff going on with that, I think. So it was a little creepy. It was just a little weird. Like, is this person like, does this person want to be here doing this speech? It was kind of that vibe. Like, is this person
Yeah.
like
Well,
being coerced? Yeah.
it's, think about somebody who's born in prison and then suddenly at the age of 20 they're let out of prison and they're like, what do I do? I don't know. They're in a completely new world, a new environment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So they go through this like kind of re-education, which makes sense. They go, they have like a
Mhm.
halfway time when they learn about South Korea and how it's not the evil things they were told, and how this is what's going on, and about the world, and how the internet works, and
Yeah.
all these different things that like they're gonna, encounter. But but I do think that the South Korean government takes like a few of them that they think are especially charismatic, and have them kind of go and make speeches about how great it is to be,
Yeah.
out of North Korea. And I don't know how like accurate all of those stories are. I think a lot of them are embellished. And I think that not that North Korea is an amazing, wonderful place to live, but I do think there's probably some middle ground that we're not really like hearing about. That there's some, yeah, some kind of nuance there that doesn't get expressed.
Yeah. How do you think that impacted your political outlook?
Um, I'm not sure, because I mean, I certainly don't ever want to live under communism. And I mean, I guess you could say North Korea could be the only communist place. We don't really exactly know, because we're not able to see, fully into there. But it could be, from what we hear, like the communist, country that exists, like the one that's fully communist. And you could kind of see that while they're shut off from the rest of the world, and they're not allowed to exist. And in a way, that could radicalize you more and be like, well, then capitalism is evil. Why would you like, like basically shut off like this country from trade and all these other things, and like not give them a seat at the table because they're communist? And then you could go the other way and be like, well, South Korea is flourishing, and capitalism is clearly winning here, and the people up there, are struggling, and look how great everything is here. We have freedoms, and we can do what we want and have a business and make money. But then you see the ugly sides of it too, like, okay, like plastic surgery, the number one thing in Korea is plastic surgery. It's like everybody's, getting their face made to look the same, and yeah, it's part of capitalism. And and people aren't necessarily happy like working in South Korea. There's a culture of people dying, from too much stress in both Japan and South Korea. And there's, you'll sometimes walk and see, they call them salary men, and the salary men are passed out on the street, and just like because they get
Yeah.
too drunk every day, or they go and get like blood transfusion type things, like like IVs, like after drinking all night, so they can
Yeah.
go back to work the next day. So that there's like, there's kind of both sides of it. So I'm not sure if it, when I'm in another country and I live there, I've lived in a few, I really just try to, soak it in and enjoy everything I can. And I'm not sure how it affects me politically, but I'm sure it does
Is it?
somewhat.
I wonder if it's an attitude of in Korea we want to beat Japan, and in Japan we want to beat Korea. It's
There's definitely that. There's
yeah,
definitely like a Korea Japan thing. I mean, they still fight over like these islands and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's still a lot of fighting going on there.
yeah, but but that's healthy. If you have, we're going to build a better car, or we're going to do heart surgery better than you, or that's a positive type of competition. It's
Yeah, yeah, you do need some competition. Humans love it. We love
yeah,
games. We love winning. That's just ingrained in us because that's survival, right? I mean, like if we win, we survive, and if we figure out the
yeah,
game, it's just that's kind of fun to us, and that's just built into our instinct.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That's certainly a lovely yeah. We're you know getting back to the American left. What do you think about RFK too?
Interesting. Definitely interesting. I mean, I wish we had the options with some people with some different last names than,
Yeah,
Bush, Clinton, Trump, like Trump, Kennedy, like all. But I do think he's got some interesting points. I think he's right about a lot of issues, and I haven't listened to the full Joe Rogan talk yet. I heard it's pretty fascinating, so
yeah.
I'm gonna check that out. But I think, I mean, I don't like him on some issues. I think he's pushing the climate agenda a bit too
Oh yeah,
heavy. I think he was right on obviously the COVID issue and the vaccine mandates, and I think he's really good there. I think he's good on exposing the CIA, and that kind of stuff's very interesting to me. Like what happened to his uncle and what actually was going on there. So I think that he would hopefully try to, if he could, expose some of that stuff. I mean, I'd be worried about his personal safety, though. I mean, I honestly don't like I don't know why you would want to be, in politics as a Kennedy, like in my, like especially in that bloodline directly. I'd be just worried about, his personal safety. I don't know if they'll let it happen. If he's coming out after the CIA from the jump, I don't know if they'll allow him to be in there because I think since Kennedy, honestly, I think most presidents have probably been installed in like some fashion or other. So I don't know if it'll happen, but it is exciting and it is interesting, and he's an interesting character. I think he's, probably the best Democrat that's out there.
I think part of the interest in him is just because realizing it's gotten so bad on that side. But
Yeah.
you mentioned you were involved with the ACLU. What do you think's happened to some of the organizations like the ACLU?
Yeah. I mean, infiltrated by bad actors. I mean, we kind of saw it happening in Santa Cruz when I started my chapter. You're allowed to start these chapters of the ACLU if you get kind of approval from the main branch in your area. You can start these kind of sub chapters and sort of work on different civil liberties causes. But I think that they really were co-opted by leftists who, were able to get in there because I mean it's so easy, really, honestly, for the left to co-opt really any organization that they want because they're the ones that are willing to do the work and be activists, like be like full-time activists. Everybody else kind of has a job and is just like working and like is tired and raising their kids or whatever. But if you're like a full-time activist, it's easy to infiltrate these groups and take over. So I think that they stopped um, really being like a civil liberties group. I want to say, I don't know, maybe in the 2000s, they started shifting to just being like another left wing organization because that's where they're getting funding from. I mean, really, it all comes down to money and you can follow the money, but who's going to donate to these groups and what do the donors want? And you ask the donors what they want. They want this. They consider this liberty. Okay, we go in that direction because then we get funded and we can keep having, our fat salaries and expand our organization. And so it's easy to kind of push things in that direction. But yeah, they used to be principled. I thought they would support even Nazis or whatever else if it was if it was constitutional. And now they will not. They're very much very much ideological and really shifted that direction. So then it comes down to funding these organizations. Who's going to give them money is these people that have money on the left that feel guilty and they're able to push them to spend more money and give them
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
and sometimes I think there's this unfortunate evolution that where organizations start out fighting for the good causes, but then they just focus on fighting against what they perceive as the bad guys,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then and that becomes a drift. You instead of focusing on what you're for, you end up fight what you're against.
Yeah.
What's been your impression since getting involved with the LP? Have you read some good books? Have you listened to some good podcasts? I mean, we want to know how to get more people to come over to our side and how we can bring them into our fold. I mean, and I sometimes regard a lot of people on the left as just, like they're drug addicts who can't be rehabbed. But there are, obviously it does happen. How do we rehab the drug addicts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what drew me to the LP was really just interacting with them, and feeling like it was less of a cult mentality. And this really happened, I think, after the Mises Caucus kind of takeover. Um, really like that sort of you're free to say whatever the hell you want, and like, and we're not we really do care about free speech, and we're not jumping on this like kind of cultural woke thing that I think the Libertarian Party was doing for some time before this takeover. And I think just seeing people part of not a major party speaking out on not only the culture war, but also the war issues and
Yeah,
COVID mandates, and just being right on these issues, and feeling like, well, this is kind of the only place that I feel at home, because at least like they don't care if I'm gay, they don't care if I now have a gun. They don't care if I, now, think this way about whatever issue. They just don't really care as much. I mean, there's some infighting, of course, and that's kind of funny, honestly, to me, because I'm like, I just kind of stay out of it. But like, oh, you're not a real libertarian, you're not this. But that's kind of cute to me, as opposed to like, I'm gonna come and like, burn your house down because you like don't have the same beliefs as me, which is the stuff you get on the left, and on the right, you get like you're going to hell. So I think that the libertarians have like this really important moment, and I wish they would capitalize on it more to get everybody that's disaffected on board. Because yeah, like if you are a disaffected leftist, where are you going to go? You don't really want to go to the Republican Party. You're not really a Republican. Like you're not a social conservative suddenly. You're not like that's not really like your thing. And then if you're a disaffected person on the right who feels like I don't like anything that the
yeah.
right's doing,
Mhm.
but I still like am for liberty, and I'm still like fiscally conservative. I'm just like not
Yeah,
into this culture war stuff as much,
yeah,
and like I just want like less taxes. Then where are you going to go? So I think really just reaching those people more that feel disaffected. And then yeah, I mean, Dave Smith, obviously, Angela McCardle, I've gotten to know, and I think that they are very sharp, smart people that are putting themselves out there a lot,
yeah,
and they're unafraid to say what they think. And I think that that's what people need right now. They want to see people that are unafraid, unabashedly going to say that liberty is, something that needs to be protected, and we're not going to back down. And I think if they keep doing that message and stay serious and stay active, then you'll bring in more people up to the party, and at least we can shift the other parties more towards liberty at the very minimum. If it's not viable for us to win, but I think local elections we can win, and I like that the LP is focused more on local now and has stopped, putting all their energy into the larger races.
well, I think that, I've been around the LP since the '90s. I think there's always been a focus on local. It's yeah,
Well, at least in Oregon,
yeah,
there hasn't really been, and there really couldn't be, because we just barely passed bylaws that allow
yeah,
us to support local races at all. So there's been a lot of restrictions, and of
yeah.
course, yeah, it
Okay.
matters by state, probably. But yeah,
Yeah, well, the states, different states do things different ways.
yeah,
Definitely, I'll blame
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I, and Oregon is such an interesting state though.
It's very
Well,
weird. Yeah,
half the population of Oregon lives around Portland,
yeah. Oh yeah,
and then another large portion of that lives, between Oregon, between Portland, Corvallis, and Eugene, and then you
yeah.
have this other section of the state where there's almost nobody.
Yep. Yep, yeah, I mean, that's the Greater Idaho movement. They were at the
Yes,
convention, and all that,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
they feel like
What's
they're more
going
part of Idaho. Yeah.
what's going to happen with Greater Idaho? For what I hear, also some Eastern Washington parts of them want to go too. From what I hear,
They
also,
want to, they can't really join the Greater Idaho
yeah,
movement just because of, like, it's just not possible to,
yeah,
work with 2 states like that, so they just have to focus on Oregon right now, but they're welcome to try it on their own. But, yeah, I mean, I think almost every county in Eastern Oregon now, I think there's a few left, have voted yes. We'd be happy to become part of Idaho, and Idaho already said fine. Like they don't, they already said that's fine with us. Like more the merrier. And the only thing is really Salem and getting them to take it serious. They haven't even
yeah.
wanted vote on it at all. They haven't. It's not like they said no. They've just been like, "That's not even an issue. Like, get out of here." So so I think, if they can get Salem on board and at least vote on it and make the argument, because technically, Western Oregon spends more money than they make on Eastern Oregon with social services included. So actually, they would stand to have a surplus in the budget. And I mean, I don't see why, Western Oregon would be against it. You could just push through anything you want with that. I mean, we just saw GOP, members of the state legislature not showing up for work because they didn't want to vote on these like horrible bills that are being passed. They just didn't show up for a few weeks and held up, everything. And everybody was all like, they need to come to work. And okay, well, just let them go then. Let them like, just let them go. Like, let them go to Idaho and just, that, and
Yeah.
then push through whatever you want. So I don't see why, for any reason, we would be against it. I guess, and then it goes to the Congress. And I mean, I don't know if Congress would be against it or not, but I mean, the only reason I could think would be they don't really want other people doing that. They wouldn't want like all the states dividing themselves and everything and thinking that that's okay. But we'll see. They're very, very, confident and optimistic that they can get it done within a decade, and some even think within a few years based on what they're seeing. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. And if it happens, yeah, we'll see. With more power to them. I mean, Eastern Oregon is more like Idaho than Western Oregon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One important question to ask about civil liberties is, do you support the free speech rights of the Westboro Baptist Church? And do you support the free speech rights of Holocaust revisionists?
Yeah.
Those are two groups that are about as disgusting as it gets. Uh, you know,
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'd rather people say how they really feel
yeah.
because then that's always my thing is like I want you to say how you really feel because then we know. Then we know how you feel and we can debate that, and in the town hall of ideas. That's the concept of free speech is you say
Yes.
how you really think and then the best ideas win no matter what. So if you have a horrible idea, then go ahead and tell me and then
Yes.
we can all be like that's crap because of this and yeah, I think that's one of the best things about Twitter is like, the more free speech it can be, the better because the worst ideas will get destroyed by facts and, logic and everybody just being like, that's horrible. So yeah, the Westboro Baptist Church, I don't think that they should be, shoving, whatever things in people's faces and, committing hate crimes and like, going and showing up people's funerals and, basically terrorizing people like in that manner. But
Yeah.
technically, yeah, they're free to say what they want and have any opinion they want and be as loud and proud as they want about it as long as they're not, putting anybody's lives in danger,
Well,
being aggressive.
they're on
Yeah.
public property, although they're disgusting and they're just being there. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Unfortunately,
I don't.
yeah.
I'm going. Yeah, some other people will, and you do have occasions where they'll end up with counter protests.
Yeah, well, there should be. Yeah, have a counter
It's
protest then. You don't like it? Okay,
yeah,
show up in overwhelming numbers and make them
yeah.
look ridiculous,
And
Yeah.
it's just like when you walk into a dark room and turn the lights on, you might notice that the cockroaches immediately run for the dark places. It's just the same way with free speech. It's shining the light on the cockroaches and notice how they run for the dark places. When the lights
Yeah.
come on, it's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as long as you're
yeah.
not promoting like harming people like
Oh
directly, you're
yeah,
not saying like, yeah, murder people or like
yeah.
sexually abuse kids or like things like that,
Hmm.
then like have at it. Like if it's an opinion you have or you
Hmm.
think, the facts aren't correct on the Holocaust, whatever it is, like, whatever opinion you have, like let's
Yeah.
just hear it so we can just all like, see
Hmm.
what's going on, talk about it, and like we should be able to get to the truth if we can hear everything.
We can. Sometimes the debates get old because sometimes it
Yeah.
just seems like you're arguing over and over the same things. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I feel that
Yeah.
way when I feel that way when I argue with border hawks, people who want to close the border, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
It's yeah, that's tough. I
it's
mean, I don't know. I'm kind of in between on that one, I guess. I
yes,
don't know if I'm not like a full open border person, but
yeah,
I'm also not a border hawk. It's sort of like
yeah,
this is a very nuanced issue, actually. Like, I don't think you
yeah,
could be like, can't let everybody in. That's for sure. We have to know who the hell they are. We have to know what's
yeah,
going on. But you also like,
yeah.
you have to realize that borders are just made up lines, and like technically, like
Hmm.
our human right is to travel freely. Like that's something that's God given, and we should have some semblance of ability to move,
Yeah. You
along the earth.
do you sometimes feel like maybe I've always been a libertarian, I just didn't know it.
Oh, I always thought I was a libertarian. I mean, really, because like I thought the left was the Libertarian Party. Like it was always like more free. Like the authoritarians were the right. That's what I always conceived of it as. And then when the left went authoritarian, well, then I went. You know, I left the left
Yeah.
because that's like I'm always going to be on the party or the side that I
Right.
feel like is more about freedom and more about letting people choose how to live their life as long as they're not harming anyone. And I thought that was the left, and it was. I think it was more left libertarian, and now yeah, it's almost like a meme. I don't know if people don't believe left libertarians are a real thing anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not, maybe it's not a real thing at this point in time, but I do think that it is possible to, have kind of a left-leaning perspective on things, but not want the government to have any say, in people's lives and decisions and any, authority or control over them. So I think that both things can be possible, but I think maybe we need to get back to communities more and like, maybe we just need to exit, from society a little bit more and, a way that's sustainable, like probably need more, commune type communities and people homesteading and living, outside and making their own
Yes.
way for people to realize that.
That I agree. And how much time do people spend thinking about who the presidential election, and yet they don't spend any time thinking about their mayor? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
if you know the name, I mean, if you know the name of the president, but you don't know the name of your mayor, that's a problem. I mean,
Major
it
problem.
should be,
Yeah.
if anything, it should be the other way.
Oh
But
yeah, and they want that. I mean, because that's you're just removing people more from their day-to-day life, I mean, you don't want people to be like, I mean, the best thing that you should be thinking about first is yourself, right? And then the people generally around you, and then like your neighbors, and then like, people you like in your city. It should like expand that way, and they've really like forced us to go the other way. Oh no, be globally minded. Okay, be globally okay, so I'm supposed to think about somebody in like Sudan who I have no idea
right,
who they are and about their life, and I got to be globally minded, and then I think of myself last. So if I'm gonna, if I'm thirsty, they would really have you think like, oh, you don't want to buy a plastic bottle of water, because that's harming the environment, and then you're not a environmentalist, like so you'd rather like be dehydrated and like then wait until you can
true.
get whatever water out of a spout or out of like a water bottle, like a metal bottle or something. It's like weird stuff like this. Like they really want you to be is this global mindset, and it's like, well, that's not going to help you or anybody around you or your city. And I think that's one reason why leftist kind of cities struggle is because they're trying to be so globally minded and looking at like things that aren't local and don't affect them directly. And I think the cities that flourish tend to be more focused on the family, the individual, and their city and the things that they can see and feel right around them.
And that's another thing too that I've read too, that like some of these big cities, they're like looking at their school districts and they're like saying, we don't have any kids in our city anymore. And I know
No
Portland.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have kids. I mean, I don't really see that many kids, really, honestly, in Portland. I lived in San Francisco. There's more dogs than kids in San Francisco. I mean, there's not really that many kids in these leftist cities, and then it's probably for the best because it's like there's the schools
Right.
are terrible, and
Yeah.
like I mean, like it's just people are leaving, and it's not really a great place to raise kids. So I can see that. I can see how it
Yeah.
happens.
Mhm. Yeah. What do you think happens when some of these cities hit their bottom? Because it seems like they're going to hit a bottom if they haven't hit it already.
Yeah, I mean, what tends to happen cyclically is it gets really, really bad to the point where it's so bad that everybody just agrees that we need to like fix it, and they kind of put somebody in who's probably more conservative than they would typically like. That'll just do it, like kind of just be the bad cop and just get things done. And maybe everybody doesn't, like agree or isn't on board, but they like go with it, and they have some kind of plan, and they sort of fix things for a period, and then they might go back another direction. But I think that when you look at these cities, a lot of like Portland, for example, was really bad. I think in the I want to say 80s. I'm not exactly sure, but there was a time when it was similar to how it is now, but less populated, maybe not, but it was getting pretty bad. And they had a mayor elected, I think his name was Mike. I can't remember now, but he owns the Goose Hollow. He was just a local who'd lived here forever and kind of ran a stealth campaign and ended up beating the incumbent mayor. And he had this like 12-point plan, I think, for homelessness, and he got featured on Johnny Carson, and he had this, like, I don't know, he was just a character, but he got elected, and he did make some changes actually, and like established some nonprofits, I think, to get, like you were talking about, to give housing to the homeless. He had some centers and actually improved the reputation of the city. Like, Portland became a bit more famous, had like a pretty high, like great reputation. And I think that kind of led to this flourishment in the 90s where people were moving here and, having fun and having a good time. And like, this is a great place to be. So I think that what needs to happen is, yeah, you need to focus on the local again. You need somebody to come in and be like, hey, I got a plan. Like, I understand where you're coming from. Like, let's do this to make it better so everybody can enjoy ourselves again. So I think that that's something that needs to happen. I mean, I think it's possible in a place like Portland. But it's still like a medium-sized city, and you could still bring it back. So we'll see. But I think things are cyclical, and we're just reaching the kind of precipice here where we need to make a decision. But if it's a city and it's going to be viable, I don't think cities really die. They just transform and they morph and they turn into something else.
Yeah, well. Look at that compared to a city like Detroit,
Mhm.
which is really, or maybe Cleveland, where things have gotten, and those are actually, got to a point where they're actually some of the cheaper cities in America, but
Mhm.
obviously they have the cold weather. But yeah, that's just something about where I wonder about where these cities are going.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that Detroit can be revitalized. I mean, I think it's like that's part of the cyclical thing with the way our system is. If things get so bad that, like, everything's so cheap, then okay, well, investors are going to be looking at that, right? Investors are going to be like, oh shoot, I can get I could get
Yeah,
all that property and land and like houses and let's start businesses, and like, and there's still people there. They'll spend money, and like I can go in and invest. So I think that you just have that cycle happens, and if things get cheap enough and go to the bottom, then investors come in or people come in that can live there again and make it flourish. So I mean, there's a program in West Virginia called Ascend, which I think is pretty cool because they have that problem with the mines closing, and it's doing pretty bad there. But they're basically offering like I don't know, some wealthy people got together and made a fund, and people can go to West Virginia if they're remote workers because they don't have a ton of jobs there. But if you work remote
yeah,
already, you can go there and they give you like a stipend. It's like $1,000 a month for a year, and they give you like free outdoor activities you can do and like a free WeWork space and different things just to kind of revitalize the economy again. So I think that people can come together that have some money that care about certain areas and make them better, and see that as an opportunity to really revitalize these places and make them flourish again. And I think it's always an opportunity. There's always
yes.
opportunity in chaos. Yeah.
And being born and raised in West Virginia, I can tell you that the blue team had a majority in Charleston from 1932 to
Mm,
2014.
wow. Wow. That's crazy.
I never thought that state would go red when I started.
Wild.
No, I mean, Jimmy Carter won in 1980. It
Wow.
was, I mean,
Was it because of the unions? It was because such a
because
union.
of unions and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Hmm.
As I often say, Joe Manchin is the last of the country Democrats,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he probably only stays with that party because of family influence.
Oh yeah.
He's always been one. He's other people in his family have been involved with state politics there. It's really but yeah, the state went red because it's still very rural, and it's cheap. It's still pretty cheap. It's low crime. People. I mean,
Yeah.
people still. You might worry about your hubcap getting stolen or something like that, but nothing serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think, yeah, I've seen a lot of young people moving to West Virginia. This Ascend program,
yeah.
in the tech world is getting pretty
Oh yeah.
popular. And I think other places can do that if they want and encourage people to come. And, I think that's a way to revitalize places like West Virginia, just
Yeah,
an
and
example. Yeah.
emphasizing also the outdoorsy element. Where you
Hmm.
can go white watering and maybe go skiing and or just go hiking and stuff like that. It's if they emphasize that, it's yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of things I love about. I still love about my state. Even though it's also the only state that lost population from 1940 to 2020.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
is wild. There's
yeah,
a lot of weird things about West Virginia. I didn't know
yeah.
that. Yeah, you
When,
grew up
when,
there.
Well, you also went from 6 congressional districts to 2.
Yeah, a lot less
Well, that's a
representation. Like
yeah,
like, when you lose population, you lose representation, and yeah, a lot of things
yeah.
happen. That's why they're trying to get more population in there. It's like, you gotta have more people.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, and I think, it's, you'll yeah, it's still very much still people can still be very naive in a good way. It's if the church might be unlocked or things like that. It's I do sometimes miss that part of it. It's
Yeah, there's definitely
or just
small
leaving your
towns
bike
where
out somewhere and not chaining it up and things like that. It's a
yeah, I miss that. I mean, like, that's possible, like, when I lived in Taiwan and, and, even South Korea,
yeah,
there's pretty safe in a lot of areas, and
yeah,
yeah, I would just leave my purse somewhere, like, on a bench and be like, "Oh, shoot, come back in a few hours, it's there, my money's there," or, like,
yeah,
people would, pass out drunk with their wallet and their phone, and if you did that in New York, you'd be robbed and, but
or,
they would just be there still, they'd wake up and, like, "All my stuff's still here, and I'm fine," and
yeah,
because people actually have, a sense of caring about others, like a real sense of caring about others, and I think that that's missing in America, sadly, because I mean, I think honestly, it's this global kind of mindset that I mentioned before, where people don't care about the local person next to them; they care about, some war happening. Like they have a Ukraine flag waving, and they don't care about their neighbor. They're willing to be like, "Screw you!"
or
Yeah, it's just crazy.
or maybe it's just because we've gotten so attached to our computers and our phones.
I don't know, they're pretty attached in Taiwan and South Korea. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say Asia is I think they're
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, they're more technologically advanced, and the internet was, like, 10 times faster in Korea and, like, 50 times cheaper. Like, it was like $5
Yeah.
a month for, like, 10 times the speed that we get here. So I don't know, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what it is, but it's something about, like, caring about,
Mhm.
yourself as, like, a unit. Maybe it's that they're less diverse. I think that also might affect it because they all look the same, and somebody looks exactly like you assume they're just like you.
Yeah.
When you have more diversity, you kind of are like, "I don't know that person, like, I'm not anything like them." Maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I noticed about some people who live in the city is every once in a while somebody will say, "Oh, we're going to go, we're gonna drive over here and then go for a walk." I grew up in a small town in West Virginia. If I wanted to go for a walk, I went out the front door and went for a walk. I didn't drive someplace. I don't. That's And then of course when you go out and go for that walk, and if you do that enough, you see other people sitting out on their porch and say hi, and then that's how you get to know who your neighbors are. It,
Yeah,
it's a
we've
natural
gotten away
place.
from that.
This whole concept of I'm going to drive 5 miles to go for a walk. It's granted, I understand if you want to go out and do it in some place that's real natural,
Yeah.
where you might see wildlife. Yeah, but literally, these are people who would go from one neighborhood to another and go be walking in another. It's so yeah, it's rather. Uh, that's something I thought. Were you also teaching English in Taiwan?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So how long were you in Taiwan?
About a year and a half, almost 2
Okay.
years. Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, I should ask this. What do you think about the prospects for war with
Oh,
that happening?
man. I hope it doesn't happen. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
would be horribly devastating, obviously. I mean, I hope that there's a way around it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think like this whole micro what was it microchip or what are they called? The
Yeah.
transformers are at the
Yeah.
that I think that moving that plant out of
Mhm.
Taiwan into the US, I think that's a signal that
Yeah.
they're gonna just let China somehow take Taiwan, most
I hope
probably.
not.
I don't think it's gonna happen eventually, honestly. It's sad, I wish it didn't, but I think what that's, like, the prevailing opinion. I mean, in Taiwan, it's very split, but I think kind of majority thinks, yeah, we're gonna be, unified with China in some way at some point, and then
I
the further south you go, it's, like, very anti, but, Taipei has mo most of the population, and most of Taipei, they kind of see the business and the financial aspect of being part of China. So it's tough to say. I mean, I believe Taiwan is its own country. I've lived there. I love the Taiwanese people. I believe they're very different than Chinese people. From my experience, I haven't lived in China, but I've taught many Chinese people all over the world, and it's just, the attitude of Chinese people is 100%. You can't even mention like, I remember having a class in Korea, I think it was, and or maybe it was Arizona, but I had it was Arizona. Yeah, I had a class that was all Chinese students from China, and I think I mentioned Taiwan at some point, and they were like, "That's China. Like, you can't even say Taiwan." They were just all like, you could just see like, me blowing their minds that I was even saying that or mentioning that Taiwan was a country. Not something that they fathom. It's a province of China to them. And then, it's very, very odd to live there. And so I hope that Taiwan stays protected. I obviously don't want any military intervention. I don't want the US involved, or anything like that or anything to happen to these people. But yeah, it's sad. It's sad that like I think that it'll fall the same as Hong Kong, um, and other places that are kind of eventually falling to Chinese rule, either by force or by economics.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I haven't been to Taiwan. I changed planes in Beijing, and that was enough for me. I think. I mean, seriously, I was asked to show my passport 5 or 6 times. I,
Yeah, Taiwan's like not like that. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
Beijing's very scary, but Taiwan's not like
I
that.
hope and I hope that for that reason too. I mean, so yeah,
Yeah, Taiwan's great. It's very free. It's probably the most free place I've ever felt. Like you can literally like go and buy a beer. Like I remember I just go buy a beer at the 7-Eleven, which they're everywhere, and they'll just open it for you at the counter. Like, you want me to open this? Yeah, and they open it for you there. And you can walk out on the street and like be having a beer, just like
yeah,
hanging out. And then you can drive your scooter. You don't even necessarily need a license or anything. You could just like do whatever really you wanna do, and it's very safe, and people care about each other, and, it's a beautiful place, so I hope that it doesn't become like China, because technically Taiwan is actually the real traditional Chinese culture, away from Maoism, and
yeah,
communism, so it's really the only place that has traditional Chinese culture left. They have Confucian temples and all these things that were
yeah,
destroyed by, Mao. Yeah, so yeah.
and also traditional Chinese instead of simplified Chinese.
Very important. Yeah, the traditional, actual, written, Chinese language. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I, I will learn. I will learn a new language, but I don't know if I will ever want to learn a new alphabet. That's just an. It'll be interesting to see what happens to some of those because some of those East Asian languages, if they ever go to something like the Roman alphabet and just have more of a,
Well,
because
they do kind of. I mean, yeah. I mean, like Korean, they came up with the most phonetic,
yeah,
language, and like Hangul is more phonetic
yeah,
than
mhm,
romanizing things. And even in Taiwan, they have what's called Bapamafa, which is totally phonetic, way of pronouncing, Chinese characters,
mhm.
and it's very, very interesting. So yeah, I think that, yeah, I hope that those types of things stay around, and I mean, we'll see. I mean, yeah, China would prefer simplified, obviously, and like everybody,
Yeah,
speaking the same way, and but yeah, yeah, we'll see what happens.
yeah. If people go visit those countries, what are some things they should definitely go see, either in South Korea or in Taiwan?
Taiwan, gosh, I mean, yeah, it depends where you're going in Taiwan, but definitely, get a scooter. And I would say go to the coast if you can. Like Elon, not too far from Taipei, Taroko Gorge, just beautiful. It's just like a beautiful natural area where you can camp, and you're also close to the ocean a bit. The cities are just great. You can go to any night market in any city and have an awesome time and eat food and shop or buy whatever cool stuff you want to buy for super cheap. You can go down to the south, I guess, and see tropical islands if you want that are off the coast. There's all kinds of different islands you can go to. It's just like, I mean, it's one big island, but it's travel. You can travel it probably in a few days if you have a car or even on a
Yeah,
motorbike or scooter. And yeah, it's just beautiful. And South Korea, I love Seoul, a lot. I love Busan too, going to the beach. I like the technology in South Korea and being in the city, going to these
yeah,
they call them MTVs, where you can that's like a
yeah,
cool concept to me that I wish we had more of, where you can go in
yeah.
and play like video games, watch movies, and kind of
Yeah.
rent out this little room. It's pretty cool.
Which country seems like it's more technically advanced? I mean, they're both such high tech countries.
I think South Korea. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, South Korea seems more technologically advanced. Yeah, they just have I don't know, just everything's so high tech as far as like the subway system, how it operates, so
yeah,
efficient. I guess like very efficient. South Koreans love being efficient and love being on top of things. And like I said, the internet was just insane. Like it's basically free and like super, super fast. I can only imagine how fast it is now. But yeah, and then the lack of like intellectual property, I think in Asia, like kind of is like crazy too. Like you can really just download like any movie, anything you want, and like no one cares. You don't get like a letter from your your internet service provider that you got to mark
Yes.
on your thing now. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully they're producing their own movies and stuff too.
Oh,
It's
South Korean movies are amazing. Actually, I really love their cinema. Yeah, so I think they have better music, better movies, that kind of thing. Really flourished in South Korea, and I mean, one of the reasons why is China doesn't allow Taiwan to have a seat at the table on a lot of these issues, and they're not considered a country. So I think that really holds them back from, certain advancements with like global advancements, with like the internet or film and these certain things where they don't get as large of a seat at the table as China
yeah.
does. Yeah.
Well, also I believe most of the Chinese Wikipedia is also actually comes out of Taiwan.
Probably. I
Yeah.
mean, China's very, very controlled with their internet. You
Yeah.
can't access anything without a VPN, and Taiwan's pretty free. I mean, Taiwan has some things that they really excel at. I mean, bicycles actually is one of them. Like, if
Yeah.
most of the people's bikes that they get, the fancy ones here, are, you know, made in Taiwan. And a lot of my friends are like cyclists. They basically buy a
Yeah.
bike in Taiwan and fly it back to the U.S. and still be way cheaper than buying the exact same bike in the
Oh wow.
U.S.
Because it's got to cost quite a bit to ship a bike, I suppose, doesn't it? Or
Yeah, I mean, if you take it on the plane with you, not
yeah,
so bad. So
there's
they
probably
basically
yeah, there's
would,
yeah, it's
yeah,
probably not a bad deal though. There's probably some kind of fee they charge you because taking a bike is kind of a oversized
yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. It'd be like a $5,000 bike. You buy it for a
Yeah.
thousand in
Oh
Taiwan, and
yeah.
then
Wow.
maybe
Yeah.
even with your flight, even if you pay for the flight, and even if you pay whatever it is, you're still
Yeah.
like
Well,
50% off.
well,
By the
what
end of it.
But what do they say at the border when you're bringing in a bike that you bought for $1,000 and you're shipping in there wondering, like anything to declare? It's like
Yeah, if it's your personal bike, I mean, yeah,
okay,
I
yeah,
mean, you can declare it and say, "Yeah, it's my bike. I mean, I
yeah,
bought it. It's my bike."
because
And,
because because
you have to
because
pay tax and yeah.
because since you were a foreigner, you probably never really tried to get a car. You probably just lived off of public transportation or whatever there, didn't you?
I had scooters. I mean,
Yes, a scooter.
not
Yeah,
in South Korea. I actually never got a scooter there because I lived
yeah,
on my campus where I worked, so I didn't really need to
yeah,
travel a lot, but I did get a scooter, which is super fun in Taiwan, and,
yeah,
some people got cars.
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and scooters are good if you're not going maybe more than 10 miles. I mean, yeah, those work pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. I thought it was a super efficient way to get around,
Yeah.
and it was very social. Like it was like everyone had your scooter, and you just kind of roll in little packs together. It's just fun. Like it's really fun
Oh yeah.
actually to be with like all your friends, like riding around a city, and like you just like, oh, I'm going this way, and the way they have it set up in Taiwan is so awesome. Like they have these little scooter
Yeah.
boxes that you go into. So if you're gonna make a left turn, you don't have to make a left turn. You go into the box, a little scooter box on
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
on the other street, and then like you just wait for the green and you go.
Yeah.
So to me, it's great. I'm like, I thought this is so convenient and safe, and you just roll up and you could park anywhere. So yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I wish that there were more scooters like in cities. I think that it would make it better, like especially Portland. I mean, I wish more
Oh
people were
yeah.
on scooters and stuff. People can't drive
Yeah.
for shit in this town, and like it's
Oh
so
yeah.
so dangerous.
From what I hear too, with the political culture, Portland is also very much an anti-car city, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's tons of cars
Yeah.
here though, and no one seems to know how to drive them. But
But
yeah,
but you'll hear all these people, talk about how automobiles are evil. We want to get everybody out of their cars, and they're trying to make it harder to use cars. I mean, they don't want to build. I'm just basing that on my experience here in Austin, where they
yeah.
where they do everything they can not to build roads. You know,
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, yeah, our whole infrastructure is really bad. I mean, it's kind
yeah.
of scary overall. There's not, I mean, especially in like a bridge town like Portland, it's not really like you don't feel like these bridges are super safe.
Yes.
And
Well,
they're
yeah.
not working on it at all.
When you
Yeah.
have this humongous river, that's a factor, and it is a humongous river. Yeah, I mean it's about a mile and a half wide there, right? I mean the Columbia,
I mean, there's the Columbia and there's the,
the Willamette, yeah, but I
yeah,
mean,
the
yeah,
Willamette. So yeah, I mean, there's both of those, and there, yeah, they definitely you have to get over them. And I mean, there's tons and tons of bridges, but a lot of them are not in great shape. I mean, you know, kind of worried about the drawbridge. Doesn't seem like it's in
Oh
the best
yes.
shape. But I mean, it's like yeah, the infrastructure's bad. There's potholes everywhere. People don't care. I mean, they don't salt the roads, I guess, for some environmental reason when it snows. So then it's
Oh
super
geez.
dangerous. When it snows, it's just
Yeah.
like crazy. Like people are just like sliding everywhere, and like it's not
Oh
safe.
wow.
And
Yeah.
then you have all these trees too. That's also another thing. They don't take care of these trees, and branches fall anytime there's an ice storm and just go right through
Oh
cars.
yikes. Yeah. That's a big.
And like it's just like like a lot of there's a lot of issues that are not being dealt with, like in the name of the environment. I mean, one thing that's weird to me too is they only collect the trash every other week, which I think is so dumb. So like if you miss your trash week, which we did last week actually, I like didn't put
Oh
my trash out, and they don't come for 2
yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. That really creates a problem. I mean, yeah. If
I
sometimes
hate
you just
that.
miss 1 week, it's not that big a deal. But yeah, if something's every 2 weeks and then you miss it,
Yeah, you're
you
screwed.
really got an issue. Yeah.
That's something I would change. Like if I was mayor, I'd be like, "Nah, you guys are coming every week. Like this is gross. Like you can't have
Yeah,
people with
you know,
trash. Like
trash once a week is a pretty standard thing. That's very I've never heard of that. Yeah,
It's because they're encouraging us to recycle is their idea with it because,
yeah,
you do start to think like, can I recycle this? Can I recycle that when you only can take the trash out every other week?
yeah,
I guess like, they're trying to encourage that, but I think it makes things really inconvenient and filthy. And then also you end up having to like run to the dump. Sometimes I've had to do dump runs if I like, I had a party and shoot, I'm like an off week. I have all this trash. Like, what am I gonna do with all this trash? And then you run to the dump and you have to pay them like 35 bucks or whatever to take
yeah.
your trash. I mean, it's kind of a racket. So yeah, I don't see why not. I think just come every week. I mean, especially when you have people living on the sidewalk and just having their trash just pile up and they don't have a trash can. They don't pay for trash.
Yes, certainly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, certainly. Well, yeah, I hope things work out there. Yeah, so it's been
Yeah, me too.
a
I hope
great
things
talk.
work
It's
out for
certainly
Austin
been.
too.
We got onto a lot of different topics here. Do you
Yeah.
have anything else to say before we go?
No, just I mean, yeah, if people watch this, feel free to follow me on Twitter. You can
Oh,
look me up. That's my
yeah.
my handle there. And yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I would say just I'm guessing people are liberty minded here, so
mhm.
I would say that just keep talking to people that seem disaffected or seem like they're not
Yeah.
doing so well about how they can enhance liberty and how they can improve their local communities by whatever means they feel they have. So yeah, I would just encourage everybody to get out
Oh,
there and keep fighting for freedom because that's really what makes America America. And if we lose it, we're what are we?
and I
Yeah.
and I should have asked who you have anybody you're liking for president in 2024 in the
Not
LP.
really. I mean, I really predicted this. I
Yeah.
didn't vote for Biden last time around, and I said it's only going to be Biden Trump the next time around, and that's
Among the LP
what
though.
we're doing. Among the LP, I mean, I met Mike Termet. He seems
Yeah.
really sharp and nice. I liked him. Not sure who else is running for sure at this point. I know some people are kind of holding off. I'd probably
Yeah.
support Spike if he decides to run. Probably support Dave Smith if he decided to run, but I mean, none of
Chase
them have,
Oliver, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, as long as it's not like a joke candidate. I mean, like Berman
Yeah.
Supreme, he's funny, but he's not gonna like. I'm not gonna like support him for president or anything. As long as it's not like a
Yes.
joke, and as long as it's somebody I feel like is very principled, I'm fine with that. But yeah, yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's just it. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's Maj Tour. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's odd, but I think that we need to focus on the local, and I think that
Yeah.
anybody that we get in there, that should be part of their messaging. If that's a major part of their messaging, and I thought Mike Termak did have a lot of that messaging. He really made a speech at the
Yes.
Oregon convention, and he really talked about what we need to do as a party to advance the party more than he talked about himself, which I liked,
Mhm.
and different strategies for how we can enhance liberty. Yeah, he has a kind of an interesting
Yeah.
perspective that was very pragmatic. So I think that if people are
Yes.
talking about that and enhancing the party and not just themselves and like kind of being, like trying
Yeah.
to booster their own influence, then I'm
Yes.
into it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. Three of the five big candidates have been on
Hmm.
so far. I'm inviting all of them. So
Okay.
some are easier to get than others, but I want to leave this as an open forum, and I don't want to pick and choose and say, well, he's serious, he's not serious, because
No, everybody should come.
that's
You
the
don't
kind of
know.
crap we do with
Yeah.
the LP. But
Yeah.
obviously,
No, everybody
easier
should.
hard to get them
Yeah.
on here. Although
Hmm.
sometimes I wish we'd have more people running for local offices than running for president. Yeah. So okay, well, that's good.
Yeah. long as
Yeah.
they're encouraging that, I'm for
Yeah.
it. So yeah, anybody you want to have on, I
Yeah.
can't wait to see them on. Who have you had
Yeah.
on so far?
I've had Mike Termott on just
Mm,
recently. I had Lars Mapstead. I had Joshua Rodriguez. I don't know how. Yeah.
okay.
And so, yeah.
Who do you like so far?
I'd like to see Spike get into, as you've
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Of the five, I'm liking
Yeah.
Chase best. But yeah, I'd like
Mhm.
to. And I also say I'd love to see us get a ticket of Aaron Rodgers and Woody Harrelson. But if we're really going to get people because they're famous, it's
It's true. That's how it is. Name
yeah,
recognition is
yeah,
99% of the game. I've learned. So yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
great, Chris. Yeah, it's been awesome chatting with you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, best of luck. Yeah, to
yes,
the show. And if there's anybody I can help you get on, I'm happy to reach
yeah.
out and see what we could do.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
like, subscribe,
absolutely. Bye.
follow the channel. We're on so far on Odyssey, Rumble, and YouTube. And by my novel Escape from the Village, I'm Chris Baker. We are out.